Right now, in this very moment, you might be living someone else's life, wearing a mask so convincingly crafted that even you've forgotten what lies beneath its carefully constructed surface. If this video found its way to you, it's because you're standing at the threshold of something profound, something that Carl Jung called the most important journey a human being can undertake. Listen carefully. Every person reaches a moment when they realize that everything they thought they knew about themselves was just the surface layer. The roles they've been playing, the expectations they've been meeting, the version of themselves they present to the world. It's all been a carefully orchestrated performance. And beneath that performance lies something far more powerful, far more authentic, and infinitely more mysterious than they ever imagined. Jung wasn't just another psychologist theorizing about human behavior. He was an explorer of the human soul who descended into the depths of his own psyche and emerged with a map that could guide others through the labyrinth of transformation. What he discovered during his own psychological breakdown between 1913 and 1917 changed everything we thought we knew about becoming fully human. During those years, Jung experienced what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. He began having vivid dreams, powerful visions, and encounters with figures from his inner world that challenged everything he believed about reality. Most people would have considered this a complete mental breakdown. Jung recognized it as a breakthrough, a direct encounter with the deeper layers of his psyche that contain the blueprint for human transformation. The person you think you are is not who you truly are. Most people go through their entire lives without ever asking the fundamental question, who am I really? They accept the identity that was handed to them by family, society, culture, and circumstances. They become so identified with their external roles that they lose touch with their essential nature. They mistake the costume for the person wearing it. But Jung discovered something revolutionary. Every human being carries within them an innate drive toward wholeness, toward becoming their authentic self. He called this process individuation, the journey from who you think you are to who you truly are. It's not about self-improvement or becoming a better version of yourself. It's about stripping away everything that isn't genuinely you until only your essential nature remains. In each of us, there is another whom we do not know. Carl Jung. Onward, thinkers. My name is Mr. Halvig, and you're watching The Rational Wise. Let's begin with something Jung called the persona, the mask you wear to navigate the complex social world around you. Right now, as you're absorbing these words, you're probably wearing one. Maybe it's the responsible adult who has everything figured out, the caring friend who always puts others first, the successful professional who never shows weakness, or the independent rebel who doesn't care what anyone thinks. The word persona comes from the Latin term for the masks worn by actors in ancient theater. These masks allowed actors to portray different characters and clearly communicate the role they were playing. Your psychological persona serves similar functions. It helps you adapt to different social contexts, meet the expectations of various relationships, and present yourself in ways that achieve your goals. Think about how fluidly you shift between different versions of yourself throughout a single day. At work, you embody competence and professionalism. With family, you become the devoted parent or loving child. With friends, you allow more spontaneity, but still within acceptable boundaries. The persona isn't inherently problematic. It's a necessary adaptation tool. The problem arises when you become so identified with these masks that you forget they're masks at all. You begin to mistake the role for your true identity. You become the job title, the relationship status, the social position. Your entire sense of self becomes dependent on maintaining these external roles. This creates what Jung called persona inflation. You literally become inflated by the mask, believing that you are nothing more than the role you play. But what happens when these roles are threatened? When the successful businessman faces failure? When the devoted mother's children leave home? The result is often an identity crisis because the person has no sense of who they are beyond their persona. You are not your reputation. You are not your achievements. You are not your failures. This is where the existential crisis begins, not as a breakdown, but as a breakthrough waiting to happen. You wake up one day with the unsettling realization that you don't know who you are beneath all the roles you play. You've been so busy being what everyone else needed you to be that you've lost touch with what you actually want, what you genuinely believe, what truly matters to you. Jung called this moment the death of the ego. Not a literal death, but the death of your false sense of self. It's terrifying because the persona provides security and social acceptance. But it's also liberating because it's the first step toward discovering who you really are underneath all the conditioning and expectations. If the persona represents everything you show the world, then what exists in the hidden spaces of your psyche? Jung called this realm the shadow. Everything about yourself that you've learned to reject, deny, hide, or refuse to acknowledge. The shadow contains all the parts of your humanity that didn't fit the image you were supposed to maintain. The anger you weren't allowed to express because good people don't get angry. The selfishness you had to suppress because thinking about yourself is wrong. The creative wildness you abandoned because it wasn't practical. Understanding the shadow requires recognizing that it's largely created by socialization itself. From birth, the people around you began teaching you which aspects of yourself were acceptable and which were not. When a young boy shows vulnerability, he might be told to toughen up. So he learns to suppress these qualities, pushing them into his shadow. When a young girl shows assertiveness, she might be labeled bossy. So she learns to hide these aspects of herself. This process creates the fragmentation of the human psyche. The parts of yourself that get rejected don't disappear. They go underground into the shadow, where they continue to influence your behavior in ways you don't consciously understand. The shadow shows up in your relationships through inexplicable conflicts and powerful attractions to people who embody the qualities you've rejected in yourself. It appears in your professional life through self-sabotage and the mysterious ways you undermine your own success. The shadow also manifests through projection. You see in others the qualities you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. What you resist controls you. What you accept transforms you. Jung's approach to shadow work is both simple and terrifying. You must turn toward what you've been running from. You must develop the courage to look at the parts of yourself you've spent years avoiding. This doesn't mean acting out every impulse. It means developing a conscious relationship with your full humanity. When you begin to integrate your shadow, something remarkable happens. The energy you've been using to suppress parts of yourself becomes available for creative purposes. The anger you've been hiding might contain your capacity for healthy boundaries. The selfishness you've rejected might hold your ability to take proper care of yourself. Shadow integration isn't about becoming your worst impulses. It's about understanding them, accepting them as part of your humanity, and choosing consciously how to express your full range of human qualities. Now we venture into territory that Jung considered among his most important discoveries, the existence within every person of the anima and animus, the contrasexual aspect of the psyche. In men, this manifests as the anima, the inner feminine. In women, it appears as the animus, the inner masculine. This isn't about gender stereotypes. It's about psychological completeness. Jung realized that society's rigid gender conditioning creates an artificial split within the human psyche. Men are taught to develop logic, assertiveness, and independence while suppressing intuition, receptivity, and emotional depth. Women are conditioned to cultivate emotional sensitivity and cooperation while suppressing their capacity for assertiveness and independent thinking. This conditioning creates psychologically incomplete individuals, expressing only half of their human potential. The man who has rejected his anima becomes disconnected from his emotional intelligence and capacity for deep intimacy. The woman who has rejected her animus becomes disconnected from her personal power and ability to pursue her own goals. The integration of the anima or animus represents one of the most profound transformations possible. For a man, embracing his anima means developing comfort with vulnerability and learning to access his emotions. For a woman, integrating her animus means claiming her right to have opinions and pursue her own goals. When this integration occurs, something magical happens in relationships. Instead of seeking someone else to complete you, you become whole within yourself. You stop projecting your unlived potential onto others and start embodying it directly. This is why Jung observed that most romantic love begins as projection. The man falls for the woman who expresses the emotional depth he suppressed. The woman is attracted to the man who embodies the assertive power she's denied in herself. But mature love only becomes possible when both people have integrated these projections. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps more than you think. Now let's continue. Jung called the entire transformation process individuation. Not individualism, but becoming who you uniquely are meant to be. This isn't a destination, but a lifelong process of becoming more conscious, more authentic, and more integrated. The individuation process often begins with what Jung called a psychological crisis, a moment when your current way of being stops working. This might manifest as a career that suddenly feels meaningless, a relationship that no longer fits, or simply a growing sense of emptiness despite external success. These crises aren't breakdowns. They're the psyche's way of signaling that you've outgrown your current identity. The old container of self can no longer hold the expanding consciousness trying to emerge. The individuation journey follows the hero's journey pattern. First comes the call to adventure, the crisis that signals it's time for change. Then comes the refusal of the call, the natural resistance to change. Eventually, you reach the crossing of the threshold, the decision to embark on the inner journey despite uncertainty. What follows is a series of tests and initiations. You encounter aspects of yourself you never knew existed. You face fears that have controlled you from the shadows. You discover dormant resources and capabilities. You learn to trust your inner guidance, even when it contradicts external authorities. The individuation process requires what Jung called active imagination, the ability to engage consciously with your unconscious mind. This means paying attention to your dreams, noticing spontaneous symbols and images, and dialoguing with different aspects of your personality. Your symptoms are not problems to be solved. They are messages to be understood. Most people approach psychological discomfort with the goal of eliminating it quickly. But Jung discovered that symptoms are often the psyche's way of getting your attention. Depression might be saying, the life you're living isn't authentic. Anxiety might signal, you're trying to control what needs to be surrendered. The individuation process isn't linear. Progress comes in spirals. You'll face the same issues at deeper levels multiple times. You'll have periods of rapid growth followed by integration plateaus. At the center of Jung's psychological map lies the self, not the ego or persona, but your deepest, most authentic nature. The self is the organizing principle of your entire psyche, the inner wisdom that knows who you truly are and who you're meant to become. The self communicates through symbols, dreams, synchronicities, and intuitive insights. When you're aligned with yourself, life flows differently. Opportunities appear at the right moment. The right people show up when needed. Resources become available when required. This isn't magical thinking. It's the natural result of living in alignment with your authentic nature. When you stop forcing your life into predetermined patterns and start following your genuine interests and values, you work with natural currents rather than swimming against them. The self operates according to principles that often contradict the ego's preferences. The ego wants security and control. The self is interested in growth and authenticity. The ego avoids discomfort. The self will create whatever experiences are necessary for your evolution. Jung realized that most psychological suffering comes from the ego's resistance to the self's guidance. We get attached to who we think we are and resist who we're becoming. We cling to old identities and familiar ways of being long after they've stopped serving our growth. The self has infinite patience, but also infinite persistence. It will keep sending messages through your dissatisfaction, symptoms, dreams, and circumstances. The question isn't whether the self will guide you, it's whether you'll develop sensitivity to receive its guidance and courage to follow it. When you surrender to the self's wisdom, something extraordinary occurs. You stop trying to control everything and start trusting the intelligence that brought you into existence. You stop fighting what is and start collaborating with what wants to emerge. What does it mean to live as a transformed person? First, you stop seeking validation from others because you've come home to yourself. Your sense of worth comes from within, from the deep knowing that you are enough as you are. You can be alone without loneliness because you enjoy your own company. The inner critic has been transformed into an inner ally. The rejected parts of yourself have become sources of strength and creativity. In relationships, you can be fully present without losing yourself because you know who you are, beneath all roles. You can love deeply without codependency because you're not trying to complete yourself through another person. The transformed person doesn't try to be perfect. They embrace being real. They don't hide struggles. They integrate them as part of human experience. They don't pretend to have all answers. They remain curious about life's mysteries. You begin to see that personal transformation isn't just about your happiness. It's about your unique contribution to human consciousness evolution. Every person who becomes authentic makes it easier for others to do the same. Jung discovered that transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about stripping away everything that isn't genuinely you. It's like revealing a statue by removing everything that doesn't belong to its true form. When you live from your authentic self, you inspire others through your example. Your courage to face your shadow encourages others to confront their rejected aspects. Your willingness to integrate all parts demonstrates that wholeness is possible. This is the ripple effect of genuine transformation. When one person becomes truly authentic, it creates waves touching everyone in their sphere. Families communicate more honestly, workplaces become more creative, communities develop genuine connections. The transformed person understands they have a unique role in the human story. They possess gifts only they can offer, perspectives only they can contribute. They stop comparing themselves because comparison is authenticity's enemy. Jung's gift to humanity is understanding that we don't have to remain trapped in unconscious patterns or false identities. We can choose transformation. We can choose to become who we truly are. The path isn't easy. Jung acknowledged that individuation is among the most challenging human undertakings, but it's also the most rewarding because at its completion, you don't just find success, you find yourself. And perhaps if this video found you, that journey has already begun. The very fact that these ideas resonate suggests your psyche is calling you toward individuation. The question isn't whether you're ready, it's whether you're willing. Are you willing to let go of who you think you should be to discover who you truly are? Are you willing to face your shadow, embrace your wholeness, and trust your deepest self? The choice is yours. But remember, every transformed person was once exactly where you are now, standing at the threshold of becoming, wondering if they had what it takes. You do. The intelligence that brought you here, the wisdom that drew you to these ideas, that's evidence that your transformation is not only possible, but inevitable. If today's exploration of Jung's transformation resonated with you, the next step is clear. You need to confront what Jung called the shadow. Most people never do, and it keeps them trapped in unconscious patterns. In this next video, I'll reveal why you haven't truly faced your shadow yet, and how this hidden part of yourself may be controlling your life without you realizing it. Don't miss it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I read every single one. And of course, subscribe for more high-value content. Onward, thinkers.